preparing and going to present his pre-submission thesis to you. So maybe maximum of 35 to 45 minutes he will present. So
Don't worry about that.
all of us maximum. You can take more also. You can no sorry.
He won't get up any, once this is out, you won't be able to ask any question to him. This is the only time you can help.
Yes. So helping. So maximum help him to improve his thesis, and he is proposing to submit before June 30th. So I request director to give some introductory remarks, and after that, Jerome will start presenting.
So introductory remarks will be about the EST,
Anything?
or about the supervisor, about the student. Lot of my introduction can be too long, which
About the pre-submission.
I think anyway, one thing is that in anyone's academic life, creating a PhD scholar, a PhD, is a moment of fulfillment, and a person is known in a sense, and an individual is known in a sense by what you produce. You produce scholars. What is the scholarship of the scholars whom you produce? That is what makes an institution known for. So that is a point of satisfaction for the supervisor, point of satisfaction for the institute. So this issue should be known by the scholars that we produce. I don't know whether you will understand that. When I was a scholar, nobody told me that. Nobody told me that. Nobody told me that. And I am repeatedly saying it. Because this institute, an institute where I worked, I studied, that it had legacy of big people to quote. But in this institute, we don't have that. So we have to create our institute. That commitment we should have. That commitment comes from your effort to become a scholar, not just a academic PhD. There is no dearth of PhD in this country, my dear friends. There is no dearth of PhDs here. The number of PhDs I get, number of PhDs I decline to evaluate is too many. Simply because I don't want to create problem for these scholars. So I don't want to have a situation here. Our PhDs are not up to the standard that is expected of. You should be a scholar. That is more important. I told you that we are in the business of producing scholars, not PhDs. I remember last time, I invited Dr. Jerome Ramesh. He's not a PhD, but he's a scholar. He's a scholar. So in this process, what you can do in the pre-submission is don't interrupt him in his presentation. Let us try to keep only clarification. Yesterday, I thought we were having so many questions in between because of clarification. We should not have done. When I went back, I thought we should not have disturbed. But then some of the clarifications are very important for you to think. That's what I was asking. Essentially, we say to enable you to think. Similarly, unless it is very urgent, pressing question, don't disturb, because we have difficulty. I know that. So reserve all the questions to the end. And I take this occasion to congratulate the scholar, because after all, reaching this stage, as I rightly said, is not a small thing, it's a big thing. And I must thank and appreciate the effort by Dr. Ramlingam. Dr. Ramlingam, although he is not a part of the institute, he is very much a part of this institute. This institute is very close to his heart. Whenever I talk to him, when I call him and I get asked for some ideas, the kind of passion with which he talks about the institute, that's something which I really appreciate. And that passion, I think we must have that, because that is, each one of you should have that. So I thank you very much, sir, for all your effort. I congratulate you at the end. And this is an advanced congratulation to reaching this. So out.
Good morning, all. I'll be presenting my work on GST governance in India with special reference to Kerala for this pre-synopsis seminar. To start with, Goods and Service Tax or GST was introduced in India with effect from 1st July 2019. And by subsuming a dozen of indirect taxes that were a part of union as well as the states into a single uniform tax, GST became a landmark tax reform in the independent India. And while GST was implemented, there were large number of objectives which were envisaged for the government, for the citizen, and for the trading community. For the traders, it was expected that a simplified tax system which reduce the compliance cost and compliance procedures. And for the general public, they expected that due to the elimination of tax cascading and tax multiplicity, the prices would go down and a uniform national market will be created. And the government expected that all this would improve the overall investment climate, improve the ease of doing business and the growth of the country and thereby the revenue of the country. But studies has found out that GST has not met the expectations of the taxpaying community even after this 8 years of experience with GST. And many studies have found out that there are still structural and operational problems with GST. And this has reflected in the revenue aspects also. There are studies like Mukherjee 2025, Agarwal 2024, and Joseph and Kakarlapudi 2023. All these found out that GST as a percentage of GSDP falls short of the revenue subsumed into GST, or the pre-GST average growth rate of GST is higher than after the implementation of GST. So almost 170 countries have implemented GST or VAT and most of the countries that adopt VAT or GST have found it successful. But VAT differs across countries in terms of design, scope, and institutional arrangements due to its inherent flexibility. And different models in different countries encompass different activities depending on what is politically acceptable. So the success or failure of VAT or GST depends on how well it is designed and implemented within a country's specific context. Therefore, Indian GST experience needs to be examined under the broader framework of GST governance, covering policy design, institutional quality, and implementation. So what is governance? So there are a large number of definitions provided by developmental institutes as well as researchers. So in a broader sense, it is the quality of the institutions to make, implement, and enforce sound policies. So despite the differences in the definitions, all the definitions agree to two most important things. One, governance is a multidimensional concept. Two, the most important elements of governance are design and formulation of policies, institutional quality, and implementation and enforcement of functions. So on this background, we have defined GST governance for the purpose of our study as the set of policies, institutions, and practices through which GST is implemented in the country. So there are three pillars for GST governance. One, policy framework. Two, quality of institutions. And third one is implementation and compliance. So GST governance should be analyzed through these three pillars. And based on these pillars, we have formulated three objectives for the study. So the first objective is to examine the policy framework of GST. Second one is to measure the institutional quality of states and whether it impact GST performance. And third objective is to analyze the compliance experience and procedural complexities under GST. And apart from the introduction and conclusion chapter, we have three core chapters for each objectives. Coming to the first objective. The first objective is to examine the policy framework of GST. The adoption of GST in India was unique as well as a Herculean task due to many reasons. Mainly, it was not a shift from one tax system to another tax system, but it was a shift from multiple national as well as subnational tax systems into one common uniform tax. And because of that, there had to be consensus between the states and the center. And also we had minimum federal models to learn from. The only federal VAT, which only countries in which a federal VAT was implemented before implemented in before implemented in India were Canada and Brazil. So due to this, it took almost 17 years of deliberations to implement GST in India, and there were large number of committees formed, research conducted, and many of the qualities of ideal VAT can be lost depending on the design of VAT. So, therefore, examining the policy framework is crucial to gain a clearer understanding of GST in India. And coming to the literature, in the global context, there are multiple studies that analyze the policies and international experience of various countries with VAT. These studies involves cross-country analysis as well as specific country-wise experiences. Coming to Indian studies, in the pre-GST tax system, there were studies that analyzed the policies of the then existing tax system. So most of them focused on the weaknesses of the then existing tax system and recommended a more comprehensive tax system. So coming to the studies on Indian GST, we can divide these studies into two: pre-implementation studies and post-implementation studies. So these pre-implementation studies studied the experience of various countries and acted as guidelines for the implementation of GST. How GST can be implemented in India. And the post-implementation studies were mostly evaluative studies on the outcomes. So even though most of these studies analyze the what are the issues of GST, but none of these studies have accounted for the institutional process and choices that shape GST policy. Various committee reports and the decisions in GST Council and the Empowered Committee has not been taken care of. To fill this gap, we are analyzing the policies through international experiences, deliberations of various committee reports, discussions in the GST Council and the Empowered Committee, and we analyze whether the policy framework in India goes in line with the international practices as well as the recommendations of various committees. And we try to identify the deviations and reasons for the same and what are the issues underlying in the policy framework of GST. And these are the 10 substantive policies for the study. So it starts from the GST Council and decision making, and it includes sharing of revenue between the states and the union, tax rates and slabs, GST compensation, threshold limits, small businesses and composition schemes, exemptions, taxing of services, taxing of imports and exports, and input tax credit. And these 10 policies are the principles of the tax system which shape the tax system's long-term outcomes. So these 10 policies determine who has the power to tax, how revenue is to be divided, what is taxed, at what rate, and with what mechanism. So in essence, these 10 aspects capture the institutional structure, federal arrangement, design of the tax base, and scope of taxation in GST. And also the policy discussions of various policy discussions of GST also identified these as the building blocks of GST architecture. And these were the reports, documents, and sources which were referred. So it starts from the Kelkar task force, which recommended GST, and till the GST Council, various rounds of GST Council minutes. So coming to the major findings. So to start with GST Council. So we do not have an international experience of a council, which is a constitutional body, joint body of center and states that makes decisions on tax. So in some countries, there are international experiences showing councils only with a recommendatory power. For example, in Australia, we have Council of Federal Financial Relations, which recommends tax policies to these provinces or states. But the ultimate decision-making power is with the authorities which levy taxes. So in that case, the GST Council, there is an ambiguity in the nature of GST Council, whether it is recommendative or decision making. So legally, the Article 279A of the Indian Constitution through the 101st Constitutional Amendment has stated that GST Council is a recommendative authority. And similarly, it has been substantiated by the Supreme Court of India through the Union of India versus Mohit Minerals case. But in practical, the states who levy taxes are not able to, states or center are not able to make decisions on their own. So there is an ambiguity in the nature. So practically we are not able to make decisions. And next aspect is with respect to the decision-making powers. So 3/4 is the decision-making level in the GST Council for any decisions to be passed, out of which 1/3 is weightage is given to the union and 2/3 is given to the states. And out of so even if all the states come together, they cannot make a decision. So without the permission or without the consent of the union government. So it silently gives the union a veto power. So even though GST Council, which claims to ensure the highest standards of fiscal federalism, so there are core issues like this. So next one is the sharing of tax between the center and the states. So all the committees recommended concurrent but independent jurisdiction of CGST and SGST. The Kelkar task force recommended a higher rate for the center, but it was to provide financial assistance to states. But the financial assistance or GST compensation was given through another mechanism. So the recommendation of the 13th Finance Commission task force is more prevalent. That is, higher share for states considering the revenue requirements. But currently, the revenue is being equally shared between the states and the center, which has not been recommended by any committees. And this do not consider the taxes sacrificed or revenue requirements. So we have our study by Joseph and Amelingam that states have surrendered 51.8% of their total tax revenue, and the center has sacrificed only 28.8% of their revenue. So next aspect is with tax rates and slabs. So the international experience or expert advice is that there should only be a single tax rate so that there will not be any other distortions and the cost of administration will come down. But it is not possible due to the heterogeneity of the population, and many countries have settled for two tax rates. And there are evidences and studies that states that multiple rates improve the complexity, increase compliance cost, and improve evasion. So these are the various number of tax rates, number of tax slabs recommended by various committees. So the maximum number of slabs recommended was 3, including all tax rates. But when GST was implemented in India, there were 4 tax rates, that is 5%, 12%, 18%, and 28%. Apart from this, gold and precious metals attracted separate tax rates, and we also had exemptions as well as zero rated tax. So India was a part of a small group of 5 countries with 4 or more GST rates. And studies again have proved that the multiple GST rate structure in India has led to high compliance and administrative costs, often stemming from legislative complexities, including rate differences.
You are forced to do that. Why did you fight for it? There was a rationale. The person who is listening would like to know. We had, unlike 2 rates, 1 rate, India had, along with other countries, 5 rates. Why? What is the rationale? We would like to know about that.
So this is mainly because of the differences in the
Why it was, how it was justified? Why it was justified? You should say, you all know it is justified, so you didn't ask. It's a clarificatory question. It's a clarificatory question. Why, unlike other countries, 1 or 2 rates, India went for 5 rates? Why? Naturally, the policymakers are not fools. They should have some kind of justification for doing what they did. What is that? Pardon? What is it? What is it?
Is that equity?
No, you, what is your?
So this is because of the large differences between the states and between the large heterogeneity of the population that these 5 tax rates were adopted.
No, I think you can say what you said. Repeat once again for the. But please stand up and say it. overrate. Has it anywhere written by this? But analytically speaking, that is the reason. Because what we had that. Yeah. Because when you say no, normally don't leave any questions. It's a clarification. Don't leave that. When you present, immediately ask why. Immediately, one sentence. Why we did what we did. Very important. Okay, go ahead.
So these are the different rate structures and percentage of countries that have adopted it. So we can find that only 4% of the countries have adopted a single rate, and 44% of countries have adopted 2 tax rates, 32% have adopted 3 tax rates, and 11% of countries. So the total number of countries is 168. 11% of countries have adopted 4 tax rates, and 5% of countries have adopted 5 tax rates. So India belongs to this. So even though India's tax slabs are 4, so in this, India belongs to the 5% category, because this also includes the 0 rated. So India stands among the top 10% of countries.
Cebu was more concerned about equity than us. There are somebody 7 who is this country for academic interest.
So in countries like
7, there is 7 rates. No?
Yeah.
Who are these countries?
But I have to.
You should know that, because it's just not just a GK. Somebody who is done a PhD should know, because you have already done it. How many are there in the 7? And who are these countries who are more loyal than us, more concerned about equity than us? Not India. India was ahead. So maybe that. Is it Brazil? Brazil, no. They were. Anyway, go ahead.
So then, speaking about the tax rates, we should also speak about GST 2.0 reforms, which was introduced in September 2025. So the main objective was to streamline the GST rate structure. So with a 2 slab structure of 5% and 18%. But this 2 slab was apart from the separate 40% rate for luxury and sin goods, along with a 0% category and also exemptions. And still, India is one of the countries with highest tax slabs. So this is the revised tax rates and category of goods. So as per the notification number 9/2025, that is after the GST 2.0 reforms were introduced, still we have 7, in practical we have 7 tax rates. So from 5% to 40%. And also India is one of the 5 countries with a VAT rate of 40% or more. The highest tax rate is 40% or more. We only there are 5 countries. So coming to the next aspect, that is GST compensation. So most of the committees recommended compensation for 5 years. But however, the reason for compensation which are identified by the committees includes loss of taxing powers, which was on a permanent basis. So this indicates that the compensation was not merely for transitional difficulties. So in this case, a permanent compensation mechanism, as recommended by the Standing Committee on 115th Constitutional Amendment Bill, was more suitable, but the compensation ended after 5 years. And there is again another issue with the GST compensation, that is the growth rate of 14%. So the actual growth rate which was recommended to calculate the GST compensation was 12%. But this states demanded for more compensation, and then this 14% was fixed in the spirit of compromise. So this is the statistics with respect to GST compensation at the end of the GST compensation period, that is 2022-23. So this blue color is the protected revenue. That means if the growth rate was the 14%, what would be the actual growth rate, actual revenue which the states would get? So only one of the states out of the 16 states have reached the protected revenue. That means most of the states were not able to reach the revenue at 14% growth rate. So this means GST compensation should not have been for a transitional provision, but it should have been extended. So coming to threshold limits. So for most of the developing and transitional countries, setting a threshold high will be optimal rather than too low because, due to administrative cost issues. So all the committees recommended a higher threshold, so 40 lakhs, except 13th Finance Commission Task Force. All other committees recommended a higher threshold, which was above 40 lakhs. And even the 13th Finance Commission recommended 10 lakhs threshold limit in 2009. But when it comes to the GST Council, so the initial proposal itself was set as rupees 25 lakhs. So it itself is lower. And after deliberations, it was fixed at rupees 20 lakhs. So initial proposal of higher threshold could not be implemented due to concerns of states over possible revenue loss. So this indicates that the threshold limit decision was shaped more by revenue concerns than by a long-run tax design guided by research and international experience. And also data suggests that only 60% of the registered firms under GST are paying taxes. So the GST threshold was to be reviewed after 5 years, but it was revised much earlier. Even before 2 years of implementing, it was revised to 40 lakhs for goods and 20 lakhs for services. And when we compare in absolute terms, the threshold limit is high compared to other countries, the 40 lakh threshold limit. But compared to the Indian economic conditions, it is still lower because in where MSME when we look at the MSME classification, where even micro firms are considered as firms which are below 5 crore turnover, the threshold limit of 40 lakhs is much lower. Then coming to treatment of small firms and composition scheme. So always small firms should be excused from the large number of records to be kept and the procedural formalities. So usually internationally what countries do is that to simplify the task for calculating and paying taxes. So various committees recommended various threshold for this composition scheme, and it was around 40 lakhs, 50 lakhs and all by the various committees. The initial threshold limit was set at 1 crore and it was revised immediately after that to 1.5 crore. So the GST Council itself stated that the initial composition threshold was fixed largely as a thumb rule. And apart from this threshold limit, the design of the composition scheme forces small firms to register under GST, under the normal scheme, because most of the firms who are registered under composition scheme faces serious challenges in the sense that they are not able to claim input tax credit, and also the people, the consumers or the other businesses purchasing from these composition dealers also are not able to claim ITC. So they become less competitive in the market. So they are forced to register under the normal scheme. So the design is in such a way. So next issue is with exemptions. So the exemptions, international experience is that there should be minimum exemptions. So all the committees recommended minimum only in case of essential services, core public services or food items. All other, there should be no other exemptions. So this was recommended by most of the committees. And these are the number of exemptions which are existing in the GST regime. So the Fitment Committee recommendations before the implementation of GST was to have 41 entries in goods and 65 entries in services as exemptions. But at the time of implementation, it becomes 149 entries in goods and 81 entries in services. And when GST 2.0 was implemented, it became 172 exemptions in goods and 121 exemptions in services. So the large number of exemptions distort the tax system. So Indian GST disproportionately burdens poorer households through larger number of exemptions. It's a finding by IMF in 2018. So coming to treatment of services, the committees recommended no distinction between goods and services. But in the Indian GST regime, goods and services are being treated differently with different rules, rates, place value and time of supply. And also further, same services are taxed under different rates with different provisions. For instance, accommodation services. For accommodation services, if the value of supply is above 7,500, it will be having one tax rate. And if it is below 7,500, it will be having another tax rate. And apart from the tax rate, the input tax credit eligibility also changes. So if it is above 7,500, it will have input tax credit eligibility. And if it is below 7,500, it will not be having. And so this is an issue with treatment of services. So coming to import, export and ITC, the policies were almost in line with international practices because there are not much things to be decided. So all the imports will be having IGST, all the exports will be zero rated, and the ITC will be available for all the input products. So this is the common practice, so which is implemented also in India. But many of these policies are not, there are issues in the implementation of these policies, because there are large number of conditionalities for availing input tax credit. Even though the policies recommended a seamless flow of input tax credit, this has not been, this was not become a reality. There are large number of conditions and also refunds. So only if refunds are made quickly and promptly, the business will, the working capital of the fund will be can be reinvested. So this also has not been made into practice. So corresponding to the 10 items under study, there are significant deviations in GST from the recommendations of various committee reports and international best practices. And many of these decisions were made due to the grand bargain rather than evidence-based studies in the reports. So many of the GST Council decisions are from the revenue angle. So we have seen it in the threshold limit and also GST compensation. So these deviations have made the Indian GST less consistent than an ideal VAT or GST. So coming to the second objective is to measure the institutional quality of states and its impact on GST performance. So theoretically, good governance, primarily through efficient institution, focuses on the efficient and effective management of collective resources. So institutions, the importance of institutions lies in the fact that it determines the ability of the governments to convert the tax base into actual revenue. So quality of institutions is central to tax revenue, and weak institutions can often create challenges in tax performance. And there are large variations among states of India in the economic, political, and cultural spheres, which influence the quality of the institutions. And also, after the implementation of GST, it is found that there are significant interstate variations in the GST revenue of various states in the country. So why should a tax system with a single tax, with uniform tax rates and uniform tax laws will perform differently in different countries? So to find the answer of that question, we need to analyze the role of institutional quality in this variation. So we measure the institutional quality of Indian states and how it affects GST revenue performance. And coming to the literature, there are a large number of literature which identifies determinants of GST revenue. So the traditional literature identifies economic development, structure of the economy, and macroeconomic conditions as the determinants of tax revenue or tax effort. And later, factors such as demography also were included. And the question arises is that why the countries or states with same GST base, same tax base, and same economic performance have different revenue performance. So then, to the answer to that question, many studies have come out with stating the importance of institutional indicators. So the role of institutional quality in generating revenue was even though initially overlooked in the studies, later many studies come out with the strong evidences that the institutional quality enhances tax revenue. But in the Indian context, no studies have established this relationship in a broader sense. Even though there are some studies that try to establish this relationship, they are narrow. Like some have considered only one indicators, or some were considered at national level. So any study on governance or institutional quality should be made at the subnational levels, given the large variations in the various aspects of states. So in that context, this is one of the first attempts to study the relationship between quality of institutions and the impact of tax revenue in the GST regime. And coming to the quality of institutions, so this has to be, quality of institution has to be perceived in a broader sense. So these are not the individual institutions or organizations, but these are the humanly devised constraints that structure political, economic, and social interaction. So it is the arrangement between economic units that governs the ways in which these units can cooperate or compete. So the quality of institution refers to the wider institutional environment within which the tax system is administered. So in this sense, many of the studies have referred to this same concept as in different terms, like governance, quality of government, state capacity, public affairs, and pillars of prosperity. So all this refers to the wider institutional environment in which the tax system operates. So why quality of institution matters? Because the nature and quality of institutions largely determine the impact of policies within a country due to many reasons. One, it leads to efficient administration, political stability, and trust in government, which will favor tax enforcement through deterrence and the rule of law. And also, the society's willingness to tax themselves depend on good government institutions. If the taxpayers believe that they are getting benefit of the tax money they have paid or they are paying, then the compliance also increases. There will be less evasion. And also various elements of institutional quality, such as education, healthcare, all this will lead to higher economic development, thereby increasing economy's fiscal space of the economy. And so in short, better institutions will lead to more economic development, less corruption, improved efficiency in enforcement and collection mechanisms, stronger incentives to pay taxes, and this all will lead to reduced tax evasion and ultimately better revenue. So coming to the methodology, we have two parts. In the first part, we try to measure the institutional quality of the states in India. And since institutional quality is a multi-dimensional concept, we have constructed a composite index across 8 variables across 3 dimensions. And we have adopted principal component analysis for this. And the second part of the methodology is about investigating whether there is any relationship. So this has been done using fixed effect regression. So this fixed effect regression has been done to control for the variations in state-specific characteristics. And also this has been validated by the Hausmann test results. And these are the indicators that we have identified for measuring the quality of institutions. So the 3 dimensions which we identified are infrastructure, social services, and fiscal performance. So we focus on the executive branch of democracy because it is more involved with tax revenue through the provision of their services. And even though some literature have identified political and legal factors, initially we have considered that, but later we thought about these 3 indicators because the indicators which are available for political and legal factors do not represent in truly the quality of the legislature and legal aspects. So even then we have kept it as a robustness check. We have done the regression along with this 3 indicators. We have done separately along with the 5 indicators. So why these indicators matters? So infrastructure. So infrastructure, high quality infrastructure always lead to long-term inclusive development. So it will reduce the transportation cost, improve access to markets, and then increase development and increase tax revenue. So coming to social services, there are evidences that a country's health have a relationship with the income. So it can be attributed to its effects on labor market participation, worker productivity, investment in human capital, savings, fertility, and population age structure. And education. Education improves tax revenue directly as well as indirectly. Directly in the sense it improves awareness of tax policies. And indirectly means it shapes people's tax morale. And coming to fiscal performance, in fact, it reflects the efficiency of states' public finance system, particularly its ability to mobilize resources and allocate them productively. So for infrastructure, we have taken road as well as power. And for social services, we have taken health and education. And for fiscal performance, we have taken development expenditure as a percentage of GSDP, as well as on-tax revenue as a percentage of GSDP. This on-tax revenue is not inclusive of the GST revenue. We have deducted GST revenue from the on-tax revenue. Coming to the data, we have considered 17 major states in India. The period of study is 2017-18 to 2022-23. Because beyond the period which many of the indicators data is not available after 2023. So these are the data sources. And coming to the regression framework, so the dependent variable is the GST performance. So GST performance has been measured using 4 different indicators: log per capita GST revenue, log per capita GST collection, GST revenue GDP ratio, and also GST collection GDP ratio. So we have alternatively done regression using this model. And the main independent variable is the governance index or institutional quality index. And we have control for some variables. The control variables which we have used are the logarithmic value of per capita GSDP, that is economic performance or economic structure, so economic performance or economic development, and share of GSDP from the agriculture sector. The economic structure also matters. The evidences that there are evidences that a country or state with higher agriculture sector will have lower tax revenue. And labor force participation rate. So economically, when the economically active population of the states increases, there will be more. It can affect tax revenue in a positive manner. And we have also control for complaints. GSTR 3B filing. So percentage of taxpayers who have filed GSTR 3B. And the period of analysis includes the period of COVID. So we have incorporated a COVID dummy variable also for controlling for the effect of COVID. Coming to the results, these are the correlation metrics and the weights for each variables. So this is the average institutional quality index or IQI of different states. So we can find that there are interstate variations among the institutional quality of different states. So Kerala with an institutional quality of above 0.5, and at the same time Jharkhand is a state which has institutional quality which is below 0.3. So there are significant interstate variations in the institutional quality. And coming to the results of empirical regression results. So despite the differences in the dependent variable, different forms of dependent variable, it is found that institutional quality affects the GST revenue performance of states. So for all the 4 models, we can find a strong and positive relationship. At the same time, the independent variables, log per capita GSDP also has a significant and positive relationship with tax revenue. The agricultural share, as evidenced from the literature, it has a negative impact, and labor force participation rate does not seem to be significant in the models, and return filing compliance has a positive and significant effect on the GST revenue aspects, log per capita GST revenue as well as GST revenue to GST GDP ratio. And before comparing between producing and consuming states, we must understand the components of GST revenue. So GST revenue generally have 2 components, that is SGST revenue as well as IGST settlement. So SGST revenue is collected is the revenue from the intra-state consumption, and IGST settlement revenue is from the interstate consumption. So states with a high SGST proportion will be usually depending on their own production. So we can classify them as production oriented states. And those states which have higher IGST share, they are depending on other states for consumption. So they can be classified as consumption based states. So we need to understand whether there is any difference between this relationship in consumption based taxes as well as production oriented states. So when we run this regression separately for producing as well as consuming states, we can find that in both these cases, institutional quality matters. But this relationship is strong in case of producing states. That means the states with high SGST. So the reasons will be explained. So there is a possible chance of reverse causality and therefore endogeneity. So we have tried to control for endogeneity with incorporating a lagged variable of the institutional quality index. So we can find that still the institutional quality index is significant and a determinant of GST revenue. So coming to the findings and conclusion, as we have mentioned, there is a strong positive relationship between institutional quality and GST revenue among Indian states. And this can be attributed to the development, efficiency, and the incentivization to pay taxes created by a well-governed state. And as we have mentioned earlier, the intra-state transactions are more influenced by the state's own institutional environment, which includes local infrastructure, enforcement capacity, and taxpayer compliance behavior. And that is the reason why this relationship is more strong in case of producing states. And along with institutional quality, the economic development, sectoral composition, and return filing compliance also affect GST revenue positively. And institutional quality is a necessary but not a sufficient condition in determining state's tax revenue. There are many other factors that affect GST revenue that also has to be studied. So improving institutional quality is, improving institutional quality is relatively easier in improving tax efforts. And coming to the third objective, it is to analyze the compliance experience and procedural complexities of GST. The main objective of GST was to simplify and harmonize the indirect tax regime in the country, as we have discussed earlier. So improving compliance would lead to improved investment and also the entrepreneurship in the country. And this is clearly preferable for a sustained revenue. But non-compliance is the challenge any tax administration faces because it undermines the objectives of the tax system. And this non-compliance can be intentional as well as unintentional. And non-compliance can be influenced by the incentives created by the tax structure. So one of the main variables to be analyzed in case of non-compliance is the tax complexity, because tax complexity can lead to both intentional and unintentional non-compliance. Apart from that, GST follows a self-assessment system where taxpayers themselves assess the tax revenue to be paid. So self-assessment in GST cannot work where taxpayers struggle to accurately determine their obligations. And also as a new tax system, the provisions and practices of GST are new to taxpayers, which demands that GST law should be simple. So in this context, the analysis aims to measure the complexity and compliance of the Indian GST by identifying its various provisions and analyzing them based on taxpayers' opinion. So coming to the literature, the traditional compliance literature stated that people evade because they want to make more profit. So this is the standard theory of evasion by Allingham and Sanmo. But later, literature identified there are other factors like social, psychological, administrative, and institutional factors in non-compliance. And it was further recognized that non-compliance is not always intentional. It can also happen due to unintentional factors. So there comes the importance of tax complexities. As mentioned earlier, tax complexities lead to both intentional as well as non-intentional non-compliance. And there are studies that focus on tax complexities at the international level. But Indian studies pay limited attention to the role of tax complexity, even though there are some studies that studies the compliance of GST. Most of the studies have focused on a macro level using revenue performance and return filing rate. And some studies focus on complexities, but not from a micro perspective, but from a policy aspect. So there are lack of studies that focus on compliance from a micro perspective, especially from the point of view of taxpayers. So this study measures the tax complexity from the taxpayer's point of view. Coming to the data and methods. So we have conducted interviews with tax practitioners to directly understand and analyze the compliance challenges. So it identifies how complexities in various aspects of GST hinder the smoother function of GST. We have identified 30 aspects under 3 dimensions of GST from the GST Act. And positive statements with respect to each aspect were framed. That means if the taxpayer responded with a 5, the opinion was collected through a Likert scale. And if the taxpayer give a score of 5, that means that aspect is easy to comply with. And if it is 1, it means it is a difficult aspect to comply with. And apart from the closed-ended questions, apart from these qualitative measures, we have also asked open-ended questions on issues and suggestions of these aspects as a part of the survey, which formed a major part of the study. And these are the 3 dimensions of compliance. That is planning, services management, and collective actions. And these 3 dimensions are rooted in the 3 governance theories. That is planning theory, services management theory, and also collective action theory. So under planning dimension, so plans can be conceptualized as the core legal and conceptual provisions of a system or under GST. So the theoretical approaches employed will display a remarkably healthy state of affairs. So this is the planning theory says. So the importance of theoretical approach. So these are the theoretical approaches or the various types of aspects under this planning dimension. So what should be? So what should be the threshold limit? What should be the treatment of zero rated supplies? What should be the time of supply? What should be the values? So all these questions answers on the basic what should be done. And the services management dimension. So this theory, services management theory states that the quality of any public service can be evaluated by the consumer's service experience. So based on the various services provided under the GST, which includes registration, cancellation, return filing, so etc. So we try to analyze these services under GST, the service experience of the taxpayers. And coming to the collective action dimension, this theory states that governance is a multi-level interactive process involving multiple actors aimed at identifying and pursuing common objectives. So we try to capture various interactive processes under GST in this, like reply and compliance with notice, inspections, audits, assessments, appeals, and these are the aspects that we have identified under collective action dimension. So the sampling method we have chosen is chain referral sampling or snowball sampling. So because one thing is that there is a no comprehensive list of the entire population, entire tax practitioners in the country, in the state, which makes random sampling impossible. And also the population is an expert group, which further restricts access to them and data collection from them owing to their busy schedules. And so that is the reason why we have chosen this method. And this method has significant drawbacks due to its non-random nature, but we have tried to incorporate various types of tax categories and various people from different places, various people with professional experience, people with pre-GST experience. So we have tried to incorporate all types of tax practitioners into the sample. And the sample size has been reached at using Cochrane's formula. So the sample size arrived at for infinite population is 385. And coming to the methods we have used. we have used summary statistics. For when the population is not, as we do not know the exact number of populations, then we use this P, that P is the proportion of population, proportion of population. We do not have. So we go for the maximum. So that is 0.5. So when we give the value 0.5, we'll get the maximum samples. So even if that will be the maximum number of samples in any case. Huh? Yeah. So it is the proportion of population. So Z is the Z score for the confidence level at 90. Yeah, percentage of margin we have determined 5%. 5%.
So you can decide. Anyway, is it a method followed in literature?
Yeah, this is the commonly used.
I can common sense. It's okay, go ahead.
So we have used summary statistics, so particularly mean and standard deviation to identify the average scores as well as the differences in opinion. And we have used qualitative data from the opinion of tax practitioners to identify the various issues that they are facing. We also have constructed indices at a comprehensive index, which is called ease of compliance, and also indices at each sub dimensions. So we try to investigate whether these indices differ significantly across various categories of taxpayers. So these are the profile of respondents. So we have this professional tax practitioners, which involves those who have chartered accountancy or CMA, those who have professional degrees. So others means those who have basic degrees or basic education. So we also have taken people with pre-GST experience as well as those who have come as tax practitioners after the implementation of GST. The age category, most of the respondents belong to the category of 30 to 40. And gender, we have more male respondents, 250. And the region of the respondents we have collected from Central Kerala, North Kerala, and South Kerala. And the mode of survey, we have used personal interview for most of the respondents, and we also have used Google Forms as well as telephone interview with the respondents. So coming to the results, when we compare the average scores of various dimensions, we can find that services management has got the highest score, followed by planning and later by collective action. So why services management has got the highest score? We'll come to that. So these are the various aspects, various scores of various scores of aspects under planning dimension. We can find that the mean score is above 3, which is a neutral score. But we cannot analyze the variables or the ease of compliance using the mean scores, because the high standard deviation indicates that there are large differences in the experience of different categories of taxpayers. So we have also used qualitative data. So these are the various aspects, various issues that are faced by tax practitioners that were mentioned by them with respect to planning dimension. So it involves the issues with tax rates. So there are large number of issues with determining tax rates, and advance ruling, issues with advance ruling, and conditionalities for ITC, large number of exemptions, and threshold limits. Coming to services management, again, we can find this is the aspect with the overall average score, the highest average score. But individually, when we look, we can recognize large deviations in the various aspects of services management. So the provisions, the procedure, formalities, and the procedure, how is the service with respect to e-way bills?
Complete picture.
All aspects. Except e-way threshold. E-way threshold, we have considered another variable in the threshold limit. This all the procedures in e-way bill. So these are the various issues or various aspects shared by the tax practitioners with respect to the services management. They have mentioned that registration as well as return filing and cancellations all has improved, but at the same time there were large number of issues with some of the aspects. And coming to the collective actions. So collective actions, it is the score, it is the dimension with lowest score. And again, we are finding large deviations in the experience of the taxpayers. And there are large number of issues that were shared by the tax practitioners, including harassment of the tax officials and the large number of notifications, cost of litigation, and the difficulty in responding to notices. And now we will come to the index values. So we can compare these index values across dimensions. First, we will compare across dimensions. So we can find that services management has got the highest score, followed by planning, and followed by the collective action index. So this is the same, similar to the same result which we have got for the average scores also. And comparing across tax practitioners. So as expected, professionally qualified tax practitioners have got a highest score and the others have got a lower score. And comparing pre-GST experience, the tax practitioners with pre-GST experience and post-GST, only pre-GST experience, then we can find that the people or the tax practitioners with no pre-GST experience, that means new tax practitioners, have got the highest score. New. That means they do not have pre-GST experience. Experience. So the reasons will come to that. So this has been substantiated. This differences has been substantiated by the mean difference test, except in case of services management, which is almost equal. So coming to the findings. So we said that services management has a higher index value. This is mainly because most of the services provided in GST are online. For example, registration, return filing, all these are online. So technologically, there are large number of advancements which plays an important role in it. So due to the technological advancements, most of the services in GST regime are have got the high scores. And collective action index has got the lowest score because the relationship between taxpayers and tax officials are not smooth, which was also shared by the many number of respondents. So we can also link this to the services management score. So services management, which primarily does not involve personal interaction. Most of the services are online. So it has got the highest score. So coming to the comparison between the tax practitioners. So as I have mentioned earlier, chartered accountants has got the highest score, which can be attributed to their expertise, knowledge, and technical skills compared to the former groups. And services management, we can find that the scores are almost equal, apart from the type of taxpayers. This is because services experience will be influenced more by the technical knowledge. That means the knowledge with the system, the how to register online. So the knowledge, the digital knowledge will matter a lot. And why the taxpayers with pre-GST experience has a lower value? So this can be because the taxpayers who have experienced both pre-GST and post-GST tax systems perceive the pre-GST tax system as simpler than GST regime. suggesting that GST regime is more complex and less flexible. And also they had to transition, they had to have a transition from the pre-GST regime to the new GST regime. So this transitional complexities, the difficulties in learning and unlearning and learning new things, this can also be a reason for this difference between tax practitioners who have pre-GST experience and only pre-GST experience. So the other issues, the other qualitative issues which were shared by the respondents were the lower threshold for GST registration and the large number of conditionalities for claiming ITC, the classification difficulties due to the multiplicity of taxes. And even though the GST network has improved a lot, there are still some technical glitches in the GST network, and there are ambiguities in the advanced rulings because many advanced ruling authorities provide different advanced rulings. So that they provide contradicting and counterintuitive advanced rulings, which becomes a problem, which creates confusion among the taxpayers. And also a large number of notifications made. So there are almost more than 1,000 notifications issued from the implementation of GST, and the taxpayer tax official relationship also has become worse in the GST regime. And based on that, the suggestions based on these suggestions are provided by the tax practitioners. So it is to increase threshold and reduce the conditionalities of ITC, reduce the number of tax rates and classification of goods and services. So earlier we saw that there are almost above 1,000 classifications of goods alone. So this has created a large number of problems, and the improvement in GST network should be there, and there should be a national level advanced ruling authority. And one of the suggestions given by the we have also validated the suggestions with tax officials. So one of the suggestions given by the tax officials is that the assessment authority, the advanced ruling authority, should not have the members from the GST department. So it should be some retired judicial members should be the members of the advanced ruling authority, because many of the decisions are taken from a revenue perspective. So to protect the revenue. So it is revenue based. So it should not be like that. The national advanced ruling authority as well as state level authority should be there, and there should be members of judicial or retired members of judicial aspects. This is from the suggestions given. And
we are not mouthpiece from.
Yeah.
You should be having your own. When I get something from a practitioner, I should have some analytical foundation to make. I'm not a mouthpiece. When I go to plantation or when they say something, I'm not the mouthpiece. I have to put that into my framework and see it comes out.
So
then it is validated by my field that people.
So the issues
to your thesis rather than somebody said.
So
they may be saying because of their interest.
But these issues are connected with the scores which we get in the analysis.
Link it like that.
So also notifications. The one important issue with the notifications is that there are large number of notifications, as well as these notifications. How it is very difficult to understand these notifications, as these notifications will have reference to another notifications. So so if we want to understand one notification, we need to understand many other notifications. So it should be updated with the versions of all connected notifications, and there should be improvement in the taxpayer tax official relationship. So these are the main suggestions based on the field survey. So coming to the overall findings and conclusions, there are significant issues in the governance of GST in India. One, there are major deviations in the policies from committee recommendations and international practices. And these deviations have made Indian GST more complex and less consistent than an ideal VAT or GST. Second, quality of institutions also has a significant positive relationship with GST performance. And third, there are several issues with GST compliance. So because of that, core objectives of GST such as simplification and ease of compliance have not been fully realized. So GST governance must be understood through the combined lens of policy design, institutional quality, and implementation. And improving GST performance requires reforms not only in tax policy and compliance procedures, but also in the broader institutional capacity. So these are the findings. So coming to the publications. So these are the publications, and these are the conferences and presentations. Yeah. Yes.
How many other?
Two.
Two.
So these are the conference presentations. Thank you.
So first of all, congrats, Jerome. So I have no questions to ask. So it's already pre-sub. No, sir.
Please don't be here for sake of being here for academic. This is the place where academic there is a nice buffet is given. At least taste something. And you are.
Hi, Jerome. Nice presentation. It's nice to see you are finally presenting your pre-PhD submission. As I do remember when I joined for the PhD, you were the person who were helping me in the entire process before joining GIFT, and being a super senior from Pondicherry University and being a super senior from GIFT, it gave me some immense pressure that you will be a kind of a role model for me. In the sense. The way you worked hard, and like finally you promised me that you will be submitting or maybe making a presentation in May, and finally it happened. And with the reference to, like, I just clarificate the question with regard to second objective, when regarding the to measure the institutional quality, and you had three indicators, and one among its institution fiscal indicators, and you use developmental expenditure as a percentage of GSDP. So can you give me more clarity why you have chosen developmental expenditure, like why you for measuring fiscal indicators, why have you chosen developmental expenditure as a percentage of GSDP? Whether any specific reason or just like why does that development expenditure matters more when you're studying that when you're measuring the fiscal aspects? Yeah, thank you.
So this is mainly, thank you Anraj for the question. We have used development expenditure as a percentage of GSDP mainly because development is always linked with tax revenue. When there is more development, there will be more growth. So we cannot take the other expenditures because there will be revenue expenditures. So we have taken development expenditure which will reflect in the economic performance as well as tax revenue more evidently. So, and the literature also has taken this development expenditure as a percentage of GSDP.
Any question relating to this? Any question relating to this?
Then why not capital spending? Because capital spending is always related to this growth and development. So
Any question relating to this? Second question is excellent question. Any other question relating to this, please?
But is it contrary to the normal aspect that the tax revenue is a function of economic activity, like how the economic activity is booming? That will be for determinant of how much tax base that is the economy is having, and that will again influence the tax production. So how come development expenditure? Because most of those development expenditure may be like going towards the education basis or social sector spending, but that may be used for consumption. Even if it is used for consumption, it may not be spent on those consumptions that may actually translate into the GST collection. So how come that particular rationale of developmental expenditure being the driver of tax collections or tax buoyancy with respect, specifically with respect to the GST, how that is actually handled?
So with respect to Aditya Krishnan's, like this development expenditure need not relate with the tax revenue directly, because in the quality of institutions itself involves education and health. So when we take development expenditure, and when the development expenditure will be somewhat for education and health, so this also reflects the institutional quality.
What about,
Capital spending.
question? Yeah. Why not? Any other question relating to that particular aspect, second chapter? Any other? Yeah, can this question or any the other variables taken there also? You can show that particular thing. I think your equation as well as other variables.
Measured by development spending as well as on tax revenue. So Bihar is going to be in the first phase.
Yeah.
Like as you are now referring that education as well as health is the quality. So what does it mean? Like as of Kerala is going to be there.
The ratio chart, that ratio between IGST and SGST.
Because as of my knowledge, I think Bihar lacks in controlling implementation. Whereas maybe in the recent years, they may be spending because of the transfers that they are receiving from the central government.
70%. Their own tax revenue is just 25%. Share
So, so firstly, I haven't showed that graph today. I had a presentation with Sona. Then she pointed out that Bihar is having high score in the fiscal performance indicator alone. If we disaggregate that, and this is mainly because Bihar is a state which spends more in the development expenditure. Their development expenditure to GSDP ratio is very high. And that is the reason why it has a high score in the fiscal performance.
Any other question from this chapter? Any other? assume that the chief minister, who is also the finance minister, comes here. From this chapter, he wants to raise his GST revenue. What will you ask him? And I'm going to give assume that can I give this to him for the guidance? He is a voracious reader. Whether he will get anything, any takeaway from here?
Yeah,
GST performances we are analyzing. So you have to increase health, education, road, transport. It will increase your tax. That's what he should be doing. Assume that we have last year 40,000 crore we got by way of GST that individual business. And we know that our main problem is for every rupee we collect by GST, what we get IGST is very low. Very one thing. I don't want to get into that. You know all these things. So there is Dr. Isaac and I were thinking that we will be getting at least. When you are talking about today, for example, last year we have 40,000 crore. This is the 25-26 total GST revenue. And we were expecting that we will be getting at least 70,000 crore. And now how to reach 70,000 out of this, which variable, where in his budget, where he should focus his hand on. Because going to have his budget, because of some announcement, because it's a first PhD thesis from GIFT on GST. It should have some insight for the finance minister. What is that?
but we can improve GST revenue in two aspects, in two ways. The first one is improve the GST, overall GST revenue. So whether it goes to the producing states or consuming states, that needs to be analyzed separately.
And I'm saying we are concerned about Kerala. What is the takeaway for a policy maker from this work?
Sir,
You may not have no problem. It's a purely theoretical work. Don't worry. But when you're talking about institution, I mean, please have enough caveats. That's what I think, because I don't want to say many of the things which I'm very carefully listening. I was feeling very worried. I was feeling tensed, in fact, very tensed. Because, which we can talk later, but you have to have enough caveats. So this has to go. Now, there is no time. Hey, what is your feedback about the second chapter? This is because she is the real expert here. Nobody has the right to talk about it. Please give me. This is what I was looking for you, right?
Jerome, it was a nice presentation. You have covered all the background. Actually, I can speak about the first point. Second and third, I cannot. First point, it was covered everything. And one thing I feel that whenever we are talking about GST, the issues we are pointing out is regarding the return filing. And in that case also, they didn't implemented what they promised. There was major deviation in that process, and they were continuously changing that return process. So I think we have not touched that area in depth.
that is in the implementation part, in the
last chapter.
Compliance.
Last chapter.
Third objective.
I think you can concentrate on our area, that return filing.
He has already that. You have
Already there in the
last chapter.
question has been asked to the.
About the compliance.
That's
GST return filing.
They are given a session, it is included. You can show it after that.
Suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any about second chapter?
I think it is triggered regarding the data and the.
Yeah, the moment there is data, you are not you are not there. Okay, yeah. That I think I was actually thinking what one can. I don't know if I say that comment will be right, because institution. You talk at anybody who? Please, yeah. Well,
First of all, congratulations, Jerome Chetan, for your nice presentation. So I just have a simple doubt that during the introduction of GST, the manufacturing states feared loss of revenue to consumer states, right? Then there was 5-year compensation was announced. So okay.
Government, it was for the transitional provision.
Yeah. That is all. Not because, I mean, that might have been, there are apprehensions saying that the consumers are going to lose and producers are going to lose and all, there are apprehensions. But then there were GST rate fixation problem was there. A lot of. Then he told, like, I am assuring you 14%. That is what. Yeah. What is the question? Yeah, right.
No, I.
No. Repeat. Sorry. If I have stopped you, sorry. I thought that information is not correct. You never said that.
Okay. So I just thought if already that manufacturing stage already so that 5 years has passed, then these whether those manufacturing states actually faced some loss or not.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Very interesting question. That's an apprehension that they'll be losers. Has it really happened? What's your?
So we have tried to see the relationship, but it was very difficult due to the lack of data, because here we have classified consumption states and producing states based on the IGST settlement and SGST share. IGST settlement and SGST share. But we cannot take that data when we compare, because many of the revenue is not coming in the IGST settlement. That is one of the problems with the IGST settlement. So we cannot classify states based on consuming states and producing states. And also there is lack of data with respect to consumption. So even though we have we do not have annual data with consumption.
I think
and
your
production.
answer is not correct. I think we can divide states on the basis of the manufacturing base.
Yeah,
and what they collect 1,20,000 Maharashtra manufacturing state. They collect and they come, and there are Tamil Nadu. You have got Gujarat. These are all manufacturing states.
Yeah, but we cannot empirically do an exercise with this whether it is. We can divide into consumption states and producing states. So,
Yeah,
but we do not
they have no loss. I mean, it seems that they have, in terms of growth rate, they have fared better. They have fared better than others. That is what happened to the functioning of the GST and the GST IGST settlement problem. Okay, that is what there is no evidence to show that manufacturing states have been losers. Am I right, Kiran? There's no evidence. There's no evidence. And Kiran, here, I mean, this is being talked out here. Okay, yeah, but yeah, they are doing better. They are doing better. That's right. So any?
One suggestion that you have discussed about the advanced ruling, and you can corroborate if it. I think your case list is not more important for you, but there are decisions by different different ruling authorities on the same point. So they are differing. So you can corroborate with this that they should have a judicial member.
Yeah.
Can you define what is institution?
Yeah.
What is institution?
The institution is the overall arrangement of various economic agents in it.
Arrangements.
So-
Read Douglas North. What he has a definition of
institutions
and organizations. Gulati institution is an institution. Gulati. It's an arrangement. I think, please, I think without conceptual clarity, don't do research.
Yeah.
That's not. What is quoted? I don't know. What is the quoted? Institution? Institution refers to the act, the rules, the customs, traditions, practices that govern the behavior of the economic actors in the system. That was not the definition in the institutional economics definition. And Gulati institution is an organization. But then you have different. There are hard institutions, there are soft institutions that others have articulated. That's a different issue. I think. So then the point is that institution can be articulated at a national level. It can be articulated at a state level. And when you are tackling a very specific issue of one tax rate, you should be bringing institutions closer to that. So institutional architecture, institutional arrangements in the tax, you have brought all lot of things. You have to some way you have to put that. I don't know how we will.
The institutional environment is a set of fundamental political.
Now rules.
Social, legal,
Not only that, it leads to customs. When Douglas North who is the institutional economics man? He says it is custom, practices, traditions, norms that govern the behavior. Quite a lot of our behavior within a classroom is governed by unwritten rules, norms, customs, traditions, practices. In a household, there is an institution. How do you behave each other? In a gift, there is a gift. There is no institution. It's all, everyone can do whatever they want. That's fine.
Yeah.
Everybody can decide whatever they want. Now, so when you define institution, it has to be contingent on the context of your study. That is where the problem in terms of when you are talking about institutional factors in terms of infrastructure, health, education, and all affecting, then you coming to and ask Sri V.D. Sadishan that, okay, you invest in power, you invest in road, you invest in health. You can't. So you have to be understanding that basic diagnostics of the, I don't want to elaborate here now. I think we'll find some way out of it. We'll find some way. We can do that. Okay.
സാറ് പറഞ്ഞ വാലിഡ് പോയിന്റ് ആണ്. ഇതിൻ്റെ അകത്ത് തന്നെ ഒരു ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷണൽ ഫ്രെയിംവർക്ക് കൊണ്ടുവരാം. കാരണം GST compliance and governance is it is based on not officer centered. It is network based also, for which there is an institution called GST network. It is very important. From your primary survey, all chartered accounts practitioners are telling about what return filing, simplification, and GSTR1, GSTR3, everything is, no, more than 60% of the governance and compliance is GST network based. So GST network, you have referred somewhere, but you have to highlight that because your subject is governance, your subject is compliance. So in GST, the most important institution is GST network. Whatever may be the policy, whatever may be the act, rule, everything is inbuilt through the network. So return filing, registration, everything is network based. So that GST network in the institutional, either in your third objectives, it must be there. But in primary survey, everybody is saying about GST and the inadequacies of GST network. You know, the beginning of the first 4 years, the GST failure is only because of the GST network. Because what is envisaged in that is not inbuilt. GSTR1 is not filing. GSTR not is automated, not filing. GSTR3 is not, even today, GSTR3 is not there. So they make a temporary return called GSTR3B. ഇപ്പൊ ഫൈനാൻസ് മിനിസ്റ്റർ വരുമ്പോൾ ഇത് ഫിനാൻസ് മിനിസ്റ്ററുടെ പരിവിൽപ്പെട്ട അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പോലും നമുക്ക് ഇതിനകത്ത് പറയാൻ വന്ന പിന്നെ GST ഒന്ന് വാല്യൂ അഡീഷൻ നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞു എല്ലാ കൺട്രീസിലും ഉള്ളതുപോലെ ഇത് ഒരു വാറ്റാന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. ആക്ച്വലി ഇൻ മൈ ഒപ്പീനിയൻ ദർ ഇസ് എ വെരി, കാരണം അത് ഫ്ലാഗ് ചെയ്യാം, GST വന്നപ്പോൾ ഇവിടെ പറ്റുന്നതെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ദർ ഇസ് നോ വാല്യൂ അഡീഷൻ, ദർ ഇസ് നോ ചെക്കിംഗ് ഓൺ വാല്യൂ അഡീഷൻ. Everybody is putting invoice on their own choice. eBay bill is there. There is no cross-checking between the invoicing, eBay bill, and the actual market price. So the value addition is not taking place. But in value-added tax, it's very clean provision. If it is no value addition is there, the department will enter and assess. Here there is no assessment based on value addition. GST is a value addition tax, multi-point value addition, but nowhere it is flagged. In your study and in suggestion point also, you can flag these are the GST network in your institutional building, apart from hospital, health, education, infrastructure, road. From your study angle, GST network is an institution. It is primarily for GST compliance, GST governance, everything, etc. So that should also, it is a cosmetic. No, don't be afraid of. You can add on. Otherwise, question may be raised because you are rightly said. You should not be a mouthpiece of the practitioners. You have seen this. You have also identified there are some problems in the GST network that can also be added lightly. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Not questions, sir. Only one or two suggestions. Your presentation was good. And my observation is the broader area of your research is taxation, within which we are specializing on GST governance. And if the presentation is based on some taxation theories, that will be more enjoyable. For example, we have some basic taxation theories like Adams or canons like equity, certainty, then convenience and economy, and modern canons like simplicity, elasticity, and modern can you take. And if we can compare GST governance with these canons, that would be another theoretical exercise. That's all. Secondly, if you are thinking of institutional quality, I think the capacity of the staff, the emotions or the feelings of the staff, that is also more important. GST officials, because, for example, when Ren was the special commissioner to GST, at that time, in some point, Kerala's GST collection was low, and he made some efforts by for capacity building to the staff by incorporating many training programs he hosted here also. Even then, the GST collection was low, and there were so many explanations. But when I inquired with the GST staff, they said, why the GST collection is slow despite so many training programs. And they said, it is not because of any other reasons. Because their opinion, he is playing as a superhero, and our ego worked out, and we are in a pin down strike. That was a simple reason there. That is because of that reason our GST collection was low. That was so. In order to capture these type of emotions and feelings and what are going on the real working environment of the GST governance, like you did a primary survey on a GST consultants. No.
These are all anecdotes. Very useful information, but should be.
Yeah, and these type of some inquiries also needed when we are discussing the GST institutional quality of the GST governance.
Congratulations, Jerome. I would say this is much better than your previous one. Now the narrative has come out very good, very comprehensive. But I would like to flag off some issues, but I'm not sure also that also. So one thing may be some questions that can arise is with regard to the institutional index that you are saying. Suppose, and with regard to the two types of states, consuming states and the producer states. Suppose institutional values are good, but they are not producing. Suppose institutional values are low, but they are producing. Suppose institutional values are not good, but they are consuming too high. So what would be the kind of analytical insights that you can get? The institutions are good, but then you are not producing. Institutions are good, but you are producing more. So what would have been the case if you can bring it? That would have much wider. The second thing is with regard to the second objective and the third objective. Second objective, you are bringing the institutional index, saying that these are the values and these are the states. And the third, you are going to specific case of Kerala, right? But I think there is a missing link between the institutional values that you have generated and then you are linking it with the third objective, because now you are asking so many questions with regard to what can be improved. I think that itself points to the second objective where the institutions are linked. But because you didn't take up some of the variables that you have used for developing the index, now you are coming back to Kerala and saying that this is not working. So what can be done, right? I think there can be some bit of thing where you can, I don't know how to put it, but I think there is slight missing link between the institution index that you have developed and coming to the third question where Kerala's institutions somehow there is a lacuna. I mean, I don't know whether you can put it for the thesis, but for a thinking process, maybe for your publication. Thank you.
Okay.
Jerome, actually, this is your pre-submission seminar. I know that pre-submission seminar, as any student is concerned, it's a very important thing. I think you are presenting it mainly before the RC. But since all the RC members have already listened to many of your previous presentations, we don't have many specific comments to this one because you reached this pre-submission seminar after your all series of presentations in this one, and after that your doctoral committee verified, and then only you are reaching this one. So most of the things in the last your work process presentations we have made, and you have made corrections accordingly. I could comprehend as an RC member, I could comprehend whatever we discussed in the last year work progress seminar. You have made it. It's very thing exactly whatever we raised in that thing. This thing. I think thanks to your doctoral committee members to this thing and your supervisors to take call on fixing it. So I could comprehend that. And also you could present without much distraction. That is also good. And in today's this thing, what I could feel now as an RC member, it is a final stage. I could just suggest, and that also it is your supervisor's call to whether to accommodate all this thing. I mean, it's up to you. All the specific questions, anyway, that part is already over. I have already raised, and Jerome also personally discussed many of the things, including the last, institutional thing with the judiciary and all these things. We have long discussions, and we have, I think he has finally decided not to take that judicial and all these things. It's very good. And this, with respect to the this current this one, I have some this thing, and maybe you can incorporate, give some justification that will improve your this one. With respect to your first objective, yes, you have included your international part. I mean, last time I mentioned that international part is slight comparatively low, but you could add, but still it is not balanced. You could add more information that would be better for you can present this one. And with respect to the second objective, yes, institutional quality, you are putting it. And again, as Anuraj mentioned, as Ashkar mentioned, the number of the choice of your variables, fiscal variables, you need to have more justification. If somebody asks a question like, your capital expenditure is more powerful than development expenditure, you should say that there is an answer, because in development expenditure, most of the part are capital. You can say that. So these kind of small thing you can simply fix. It is not this thing, but it is more like more fiscal and economic this thing. I mean, you can see, I think you can have some clarity. And also when you plot the index, I think if you can see that you have three classification, that also you can, this thing will get, I mean, since it is this thing, you could have this thing, but I understand that I was just thinking that the performance of each of these dimensions, how states are varying, that I mean, you can think about that, whether if you want to incorporate all these things. And my major concern is for the last, I mean, as already people mentioned, yes, you have made a ground reality and you have a lot of points, but then from that, you have arrived at, there is, there should be an improvement in the, ITC thing, restriction, ITC's conditionality should be reduced and all these things. Instead of that, you can, if you see, you can try to quantify that. Whatever statement they have made, you can quantify improving something. These things are very qualitative, this thing. So if you can quantify and fix it and make your recommendation accordingly, it will be more appealing when a reviewer see. I think it will be more like an appealing thing to review. And also in your questionnaire, no. So the questionnaire, the comprehension, if you can put it at the beginning. So this is the way I have framed all the questionnaire, and some light on questions may also will give the background more strong. Okay, so that you can link to this, questionnaire we frame because of some theory, some analytical thing already there. So that part is slightly missing, so that you can improve. I think in your this is a suggestion for your thesis purpose. You can incorporate all these things so that you'll get more comprehension. You can avoid most of the questions when they come for the when after the Viva was happening. Viva will happen. No, at that time, some of these questions can be avoided. And after all, I mean, I think if you see the total, I think you have comprehended your concepts in three different perspective objectives. I think only thing is in your thesis writing stage, you take all the points and you try to address whatever possible. Again, if you are not addressing also, you just put a line saying that because of this reason, this thing. So justification may help you to this one. I think your supervisor can take a call on that. So once again, I congratulate Jerome for your wonderful presentation, and also your doctoral committee members and your supervisor for your wonderful support. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Jerome, thank you for a nice presentation. I have a few suggestions. I'll start with chapter 1. I thought if time permits, you can take them and see if you can incorporate them. First thing is, see, you have pointed 10 policies. And I was thinking whether the ordering of all the policies was actually correct, because see, you are talking about tax rates and slabs, and then exemptions come much later. I think they should come together. You fix the what exemptions and rates, they should come together. See, tax rates and slabs, then you move on to GST compensation threshold limits and so I think exemption should sit together with the rates, because they are discussed together. Okay, what is exempted, what is under the what is to be taxed, and how much to be taxed, right? That is one structural suggestion that I want to make, and you have to also see whether there's a logical consistency what is flowing through the policies that you have identified here. Then other is about, see, GST Council, you made certain interesting points that, in India, so unlike in other countries, the structure of GST Council is different. Okay. So I was thinking that what lessons do you learn from other countries in terms of asymmetry of power? So is in India, you are saying that it is there is asymmetry in the sense the center ultimately controls what decisions to be taken, right? So maybe you can draw insights, if there are available, from other countries to say what would have been an ideal GST council and how it should perform. So if you tie them to the lessons, I think your point that India is following an asymmetric council could be justified. Then one point that you mentioned, you cited, I think, Professor Joseph and Professor Ramalingam, that India has the states have surrendered about 51.8% of taxes. I think that number is wrong. Yeah. So yeah, because so you can take the empirical data and write it. See, on average, the GST contributes to 43 to 44% of the own tax revenue. So that is what the total taxes.
What proportion of the tax revenue you surrender?
Okay. So of the total taxes, okay, fine. Higher, yes, that is true. True, that is true.
It was distributed equally. That is the point you are saying. Not that proportion that.
Then about the thresholds you are talking about, and see, again, I was thinking that you are commenting on, thresholds have been revised, and 20 lakh versus 40 lakh, and a lot of discussion is happening. Is there any scientific way of arriving at thresholds? Is there any study towards that end in the international literature? If that is so, how the GST policy would have taken that into consideration rather than arbitrarily talking about the thresholds? Okay, and also you have this is more of a clarificatory question. So you made a statement that India's GST with large exemptions disproportionately affect the poor. Is it so? The study by IMF, but I couldn't really understand how it actually disproportionately affects poor due to exemptions. So if you look at commodities that are exempted from GST, are the commodities that are mostly basic goods, which are consumed by and large by the poor. So if at all, it's only affecting them positively. If you tax them, it is going to affect them disproportionately. That is what my understanding. Okay, just think about it. You don't have to necessarily answer that. And
That maybe an article related to other countries. In certain countries, even the medicines are not given the exemptions. So that may be the point.
the last about your chapter 1, I was thinking, since you have put this 10 and say you can maybe put a summary table, to what extent it is in line with the international practices, to what extent it is in line with the committee recommendations, to what extent. So maybe that could speak how much the GST policy framework has been adapting or adopting to the global practices, committee recommendations, and so on. And that summary table would be interesting. I don't know if you already have it in the draft. If it's there, then nothing to worry. Coming to the chapter 2, I think you have to, as director mentioned, also others mentioned, that you have to write explicitly the main caveat. So we were discussing that offline. This is very different from the standard way of measuring institutional quality. But yet, why we did not follow the standard way and why you had to follow the way that you did, I think needs an explicit mention and detailed discussion, without which the questions are likely to come again and again. And if an external asks, that will be difficult. We can ask and, resolve it. So I think that part. And one thing that you could do, because the fiscal performance is creating a bit of tension with respect to your understanding, what you could do is to drop it, run the regression, and see if the results are still intact.
I have doubt whether in the previous presentation, when said that legislature and judiciary is out of the field, whether we should say that these things should be avoided, why we have avoided it. Standard is whether it is included.
Yes, in the standard literature, it is.
Avoiding.
Yeah, it is because, sir, in the last presentation, it was decided to avoid because the variables that were captured under it were, were subjected to debating. So they were capturing something very different from what it should have captured. But globally, if you look at the literature, they do consider the legal, political dimensions of institutional quality. Yes. Yeah. So I'll stop here.
Adding to Ranjit, your suggestions are very general, which has been said by many for a long time. So you can make the suggestions more specific.
In fact, we have specific suggestions in the draft, but when it comes to presentation, we just put the points. So
Hello, can I ask a question? Hello?
Yeah, you are by all means.
Yeah, I'm online. Jerome, first of all, Jerome, it's a very good presentation, and I think happy congratulations to you for your pre-submission presentation. I have 2 points to tell. The first one is your topic is mainly on governance issue, but what is the immediate governance challenges of national level in India, what are the things we have to attend, and also for Kerala, what is in particular? I think 1 or 2 issues I think you have to mention. That will be nice thing. And also I think somebody already said that last time also I suggested about this more specific suggestions. Most of the suggestions are general in nature. And another point regarding this, why in India we have used this multi-rate structure. Actually, in a rate fitment committee, they have a lot of discussions about this thing, and mainly to protect the equity they have suggested this multi-rate system, and mainly to protect the poor, to reduce the regressivity of this GST tax structure, to mainly for giving more rates to essential goods, 5 rates and 12 rates like that. Now again it is reduced to 5. So that is the main reason for using this multi-rate structure. I think you can explain a little bit about in your thesis why India went for this multi-rate structure, and consequently how they are changed again. And anyway, mainly the rate structure changes happen in the downward way. Only sin goods are having 40% rate. The other rates are on the declining way, and that also reduces the regressivity. In that way also we can argue. So that is one point I would like to add. And another thing is, I think Dr. Thomas already explained that thing. There should be a coordination of GSTN and also the department on act and rules. Then only in our notification study also we found that there is lack of coordination between the GSTN network and act and rules. That's why a lot of delay happened to making changes in the the act changes and corresponding changes in the GSTN network system. Because of that, number of a lot of notifications issued only for correcting the return filing and all those things. So that also you can think of this governance issue. These are the points I would like. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Anybody has any question here? I think, yeah, 12:30. No, I don't want to add much. I think we perhaps I like have a sitting together, but generally I think I don't know this second chapter. First chapter is okay. I mean, second chapter. I mean, I've not read it, so I should be very careful before making comments. Second chapter, I think institutions. That broad framework is fine, excellent. But the only thing is that broad framework has to be articulated down to the level where then you should have some understanding of what is it that problem. Because your understanding of the nut and bolt of the problem is not very clear, to be very frank enough. What is actually happening at the ground level? We should have an understanding. From there, you can connect the institutions. Perhaps I was wondering, along with these, along with those otherwise, something like ease of doing when your governance quality index is available. I suppose Bangalore Institute has been preparing that across. Corruption index is available now. Kerala is the best, in fact, and not highest in the best in terms of lowest corruption. This is a kind of there are similar indices. Lowest. We are the lowest. We are the lowest. So think about some kind of governance factors that, because otherwise totally institutional factors totally not related to GST, but you can have some one or two. Others are found slightly difficult to digest. But the only thing is analytically you can argue this particular case, as Kiran said, analytically do it, but within the data limit, all what I could do this. At least get some specifics, for example, across Indian states, GST specific data, one GST specific department characteristic. Can you get something? Because one indicator. Think in terms of, if possible. And in the final thing, your last chapter, one point of concern which I have is all these issues are there. Ease of complaint is a problem. But if you are a chartered accountant, no problem. That message cannot go. What does it mean? Because you said that ease of compliance is but the problem is less if you are a chartered accountant says no problem, I will manage. Then what does it mean? Because that's the message which I got. What does it mean? Please.
There are 30 different types of questions asked. This question has been carefully selected from the Act. So
that's fine, no problem.
I will tell you, sir, I have background because, and the questions has been asked to the
No, let me complete then. Let me. The point is that first of all, you need to have an analytical justification for why I interviewed consultants.
That is right.
That is very important
It
to
is
start
written-
with.
it
You
is-
can have a reason for.
It is already
Why?
written.
You should do that. That is very important. Why consultants? What is the advantage of giving them? That's another thing. And from there, these across different categories, I found the chartered accountants no issue. This is higher. That's what I, just elaborate on that.
Chartered accountant alla. See, when a question has been asked, how you are responding to a particular item. A non-chartered accountant person, non-cost accountant person says that I find it's very difficult to comply with. The chartered accountant and cost accountant says that it's not a problem to me. For example, to what extent the term that is the value of supply is it is no problem to you. For chartered accountant is strict. I'm sorry, 4 is strict. Regarding the positively, non-chartered accounts are difficult because of the knowledge adilla. There complexity ulladondana knowledge illathu. Chartered accounts are pettannu padikkunnu, idu cheyyunnu. But our knowledge level is also
Observation. Then the problem is that the problem can be addressed by if you are this way also. Instead of changing your acts, rules, and procedures, if you improve the capabilities of the.
That is right. That is what a suggestion. That they said that we don't have a proper. Sir, I will tell you, we don't have a proper training. എന്ന് വളരെ ക്ലിയർ ആയിട്ട് അവർക്ക് അതിന്റെ നോളജ് ഇല്ല.
Chartered accountants.
No, sorry. ഞാൻ പറയുന്ന പോയിന്റ് non-chartered accountants, chartered accountants ആണല്ലോ. Your question is whether non-chartered accountant, chartered accountant. Why chartered accountant says that this is not a problem to me, where non-chartered accountant says that this is a problem to me because of their knowledge level. This is my answer.
Because their own knowledge.
Their non-knowledge level.
What are we studying?
അല്ലല്ല ജനറലി നിങ്ങൾ ഒരാളുടെ പറയും ഞങ്ങളുടെ റിസൾട്ട് ആണ് ഫൈൻഡിങ് ആണ് പറയുന്നത്. ഒരാളെ കണ്ടു കഴിഞ്ഞാല് ഇപ്പൊ ഒരു ചാർട്ടേഡ് അക്കൗണ്ടന്റ് ഒന്നും അറിഞ്ഞുകൂടാത്ത ചാർട്ടേഡ് അക്കൗണ്ടൻസ് ഉണ്ട്.
ചാർട്ടേഡ് അക്കൗണ്ടൻസ് പറയുന്നത് അവരുടെ 50 ക്ലയൻസിനെ ഫണ്ട് അവർക്ക് അറ്റൻഡ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമെങ്കിൽ ഇപ്പൊ അതൊരു 20 പറ്റുന്നുള്ളൂ.
ജനറൽ ആയിട്ട് അത് that is not the question we asked. We asked the question specifically in each and every item. The entire chapter of the act has been taken. We ask questions one by one, whether you comply with this, what is the problem you are facing, what is your suggestions. ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ തന്നെ 4 ABCD ആയിട്ട് ഡിവൈഡ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. You can show the questionnaire, interview schedule also to them. അങ്ങനെ ചോദിച്ചിട്ടാണ് അവർ ആൻസർ ചെയ്തേക്കുന്നത്.
Okay. Yeah, I think anyway, so the point is that in any thesis, as I said, thesis is not the end of your research. Don't make it your end of your research, first of all. It's only just you are getting a license to drive your car on the road. You keep on driving, but then you should get the license. That is the only thing. So I think wherever the problems are there, the kind of obvious questions like, for example, why Kerala, and there was also repeating that, why Kerala, why India went for a multiple kind of thing. So obvious thing can be always, wherever possible you find there's a problem, try to give reason, maybe footnote, whatever it is. So try to get as much advanced grade as possible. And I think, as I said yesterday also, you won't be getting another opportunity, which I don't think that you cherish it either. Ideally, you should cherish it. Ideally, because so many people are wasting the time for it. I'm sitting here. Actually, we are spending our time for you. So you should be cherishing that. So many people. So you won't be getting a chance for that. Yes. And I'm sure this will be a good work. And read broadly about this subject, very important. And you need to have expertise in the area as well as on the topic. So area-wise expertise is equally important. You cannot afford to be, somebody will be asking some questions in the broad area. You can't say that, no, I don't do that. I only do this. After all, it's a small area. Anyway, but you presented it very well. And in general, there's a good compliment you got from everyone. And I'm very stingy in terms of giving compliment. That's by birth, and my genes are like that. So if I have not complimented you enough, please bear with me. I have given you my maximum compliment. Take it like that, okay? And all the best. I know because I also remember we all went through this stage. We know the difficulty. And we all went through much more difficult stages because our supervisors were very different from your supervisors. You know, they were very, they don't have this kind of consideration. You see, you have very considerate supervisors. Okay, so wish you all the best and thank all of you. And again, once again, compliment the supervisor and other faculty and colleagues who helped in his grooming.
And I want to thank especially all of you, especially Dr. Kiran, who has given spent his time to develop the chapter 2, everything, and that is objective 2, as well as Ranjit, who has discussed. See, all the last presentation has been, incorporated. That is what I've asked questions, almost 5 or 6 questions. Director has asked, Ranjit has asked, Anub. All this has been properly incorporated. So, what next, sir?
Next is now you have to go for your synopsis and sending it.
Yes, sir.
What is the procedure? What is the
Ranjit will. Yes, sir. And he has already prepared his first one, and interview schedule, everything should be added, and I think he will submit it after a detailed discussion with the director. Some inputs director will also give it by June 20 is the time. Almost 1 month is there, so I think his other half will help him. Who is she? Yes. ഒന്ന് വായിച്ച് ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് ഒക്കെ ഒന്ന് കറക്റ്റ് ചെയ്തോണം കേട്ടോ. അത് ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് പോരാ അത്ര. ഓക്കെ, താങ്ക് യു.
Okay, thank you.